into it. Hello, my name is Adam Krieger, and welcome to Warren Township Youth and Family Services. This is our first FaceTime live presentation. Obviously, it's not under the ideal circumstances, but we thought this would be a wonderful way to communicate with the community of Warren Township and anybody else who is watching this. So I want to again welcome all of you. I know many of you are probably home today, and we hope that you'll join us for our conversation. Just to tell you a few things, and I'll introduce my guest in a moment here. If there are any technical glitches, please don't log off. We've had a couple occasions where the video's gone blank for a second, just a moment or two, and then the sound is stayed on. So if that happens, it'll hopefully just be a second or two. You are welcome to send in questions throughout the presentation. We'll do our best to try to answer any questions. And then also for you to know that with Warren Township Youth and Family Services, we are still open for business. We are doing all of our services by phone and by video. We use a platform that is HIPAA, this isn't the correct language, but basically HIPAA approved platform for video conferencing. And then probably most of our clients we're talking to by phone at this point. So we are working with our current clients, and then we also have some clients that have been on hold that we're in the process of getting back in. If you wish to do an intake call, you're welcome to call us here at Warren Township Youth and Family Services. And then let me just say a word about Text-a-Tip. Text-a-Tip is a valuable service that's been around now for a number of years. It's managed by LEAD out in Lake Forest, but it is a national program. Warren Township is unique in that we're one of the few communities that has our own code, which is WTH or WT Help, sorry. And then the number is 844-823-5323. If you go to our website, you'll see this information. But Text-a-Tip is a wonderful way for your children during this difficult period if they just need somebody to reach out to. If they're feeling at all isolated, they have some questions, just so you know that that's available. Your children have been educated on this through school, but we want to make sure that you as parents know what's happening. So let me go ahead and introduce our speaker, and we'll get started with our presentation. So today's presentation is called Understanding Your Child's Social, Emotional, and Behavioral Needs During COVID-19. And our speaker today, when we're having a conversation with, is a very well-known child psychologist, Dr. Chilamkurti. I have known, and she usually goes by Dr. Chinni, I have known Dr. Chinni now for probably somewhere well over 15, maybe close to 20 years. She was our clinical consultant for many years here at the township. She has done many workshops for us. She is very well known in the community, consulted with many school districts. She was with Rosalind Franklin Medical School for many years and has a wonderful practice here in Gurnee. And so we are so excited to have her. And so I'm going to go ahead and get started with my first question. And so, Dr. Chinni, the first question I have for you is, can you tell us a little bit about what you're observing currently in talking to your clients, talking to people in general, regarding parenting and the impact on children? So I'd like to start with your general thoughts.
Thank you, first of all, for having me, Adam. It's a privilege to be able to interface with the community at this very challenging time, and hopefully we can all dialogue together and be of support to each other. We are in a situation that is unfamiliar, uncertain, and unprecedented. And all of that is causing us to feel out of control. Many of us, including adults, are feeling like we don't have choice or control over the situation. And that's an ideal recipe for anxiety, panic, and fear. And what we're seeing is actually parents are doing a pretty nice job. I have to say, hats off to them. And I'd like to shift to the positive side, but let's kind of take the reality, because I think for parents and as adults, it is very, very important that as we reassure our children that we are not glossing over or falsely reassuring them. This is a very serious situation. And to say to a child, don't worry about it, is actually doing them more damage than good. So, what is that fine balance between appropriate information sharing with our children versus dismissing it or just kind of being flippant? Because not because you want to be flippant, but because you don't want your children to worry about it. Mm-hmm. And that's the struggle most parents are having. I think the number one challenge that parents are having is many of us are working from home. And we are on the phone, on video calls, and our children, are curious and they peek into your rooms or offices or overhear you, and they are hearing information that is just accentuating their anxiety. Whether you're not working, you're not making the income, financially you're being hit, and that is something I want parents to be more mindful of. As they're working from home, be mindful of what information your kids are being exposed to regarding your own stress and your own work situation to the extent you can. I know being cooped up in the house doesn't give us a lot of latitude to shut the doors and keep our kids away, but that's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing from children information about their parents and their stress levels that is not helping children feel relatively safe and secure at these times. So that's number one.
Yeah.
Two, please turn the TV off. We are being inundated with information, and children, and including us as adults, don't need to know the details. We need to know a little bit of it. We know what we need to know, which is we need to stay home, we need to wash our hands, and we need to observe social distance. That's all we need to know, and that's all we have control over. For children, teenagers, and for us adults to know that the death rate has exponentially increased or the number of cases have exponentially increased, there's not anything more we can do than what we're already doing. And so limit the exposure to about 20 minutes in the morning to about 20 minutes in the evening, because that is what we can control. And the media means well, but we have to, as adults, titrate that information. Putting a 4-year-old in front of a television show or a news show is not a good idea, because they understand it and they don't understand it. And it makes them very anxious with information that they can't quite interpret. So that's the other thing, is titrate the amount of information, limit the amount of social media that your children are on. The other piece, and this is a challenge for all of us, is how do we as adults we can be the safest place for our children. And we have to model calm and resiliency, not fear and panic. Children will remember, a year from now, children will remember less about the virus than the climate in the house. And we have control over the climate in the house. And by that, I mean, how do we conduct ourselves? Not that we can pull our hair out and cry and express frustration, but let's not do that in front of our children. Let's do that with our significant others, with friends, outside of the eyesight and hearing field of our children.
Yeah, I think I had mentioned to you that I had sort of the experience where I've talked to a few parents on the phone, clients and some other people, and what I often will hear is the parent will begin by discussing some behavior that their child is showing that is of concern, but very quickly often the conversation really turns to the parent's own stress level. I feel like one of the variation on this phrase I've now heard a number of times is, if this was any other time, what my kid's doing probably wouldn't be frustrating me. So people really are on edge.
Absolutely. The minor frustrations are taking on a titanic proportion, and we need to keep things in perspective. And if we as adults, we're human beings, we are vulnerable. And if I flip out, if I freak out, that's okay.
Yeah.
Let's be forgiving of ourselves and apologize to our children and say, Mommy didn't handle that really well. I'm sorry. Let's take some deep breaths. Deep breathing, guys, is the key to help us survive this situation. We all know that taking 3 deep belly breaths takes us from the panic or the feelings part of our brain to the more calm and thinking part of our brain. So if you can have your children 3 to 5 times take deep breaths, they may think this is corny, they may think this is quack, whatever, but insist you have to believe that. Take deep breaths, and with each deep breath, if you can say, we're all going to be okay. We are all going to be okay. We are all safe. That's the best thing you can do for your children and for ourselves, because our anxiety peaks and our anxiety kind of just goes off the charts. So I think taking care of ourselves, it's like that oxygen mask in the airplane. We have to, as adults, first put the mask on in order to be helpful to our kids. So I know many parents will say, where do you think we're going to get time for self-care? When we have to teach our kids, entertain them, cook, clean, and do our jobs. And this is something that's so unprecedented that those multiple roles have to be done simultaneously. And it is very, very stressful. So just accept that this is a period of stress, and how do we get ourselves those stress outlets? So if you have a partner, maybe take a walk alone by yourself for 15 minutes so that you're not constantly in contact with your kids and your partner and your pets. So you have that moment of sanity and self-reflection, and likewise do that with each of your kids. We can go out as long as we maintain the social distance. And I think going out is so important. And along those lines, many parents ask us, what do we do with our children now that they're not in school? And this is spring break for many of us. And I do think getting kids to have a sense of a plan for the day is important. We may call it a routine, we may call it a schedule, and kids sometimes are very averse to those two terms. No, you're not in school. We don't need a schedule. We don't need a routine. But even if they can say, hey, we'll get up at 9, have breakfast, brush our teeth, have some project time, have some outdoor time, have lunch time, have some quiet time, have some family time, and then go to bed. That's a plan for the day. And that gives us a sense of control, a sense of purpose, and at the end of the day, it makes us feel like, oh, okay, we did a good job with our day. But if we just get up whenever we want to wake up, watch TV whenever we want to watch TV, I have some kids eating lunch at 3 in the afternoon, dinner at 10, and that just adds to this sense of loss of control. We don't have to be drill sergeants, but we need to engage our children in coming up with a plan for the day. When are they going to do their chores? When are they going to go outside and play for a while and then come back? So there's a lot of things that we can do in this very uncertain, unfamiliar times to give our children and ourselves a sense of predictability and control. And that's key.
I think one of the things that, again, that you said, and I thought you and I were talking prior to this, and maybe I'm taking it from that conversation, but you're very aware of the words you're using. And I have to imagine, because of the work you do, you may be more aware of your words than most people. And I really like, and I will start using the word in my own life, plan versus schedule. Because what you hit on is, a schedule sounds often rigid or regimented, whereas a plan is something that can be adaptable. And I really agree that when we think of mental health, a key component of mental health is mental flexibility. And I think that the more rigid or more stuck people feel, the more frightening this is, versus when they can kind of get up every day and say, what is my plan? What are we gonna do today? So you're really endorsing the idea of very actively, and I understand it has to be done based on the age of the child, but to very actively engage the children in the planning. Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely. Even a 3-year-old, what would you like to do today? Let's have some breakfast, because you can have pictures.
Yeah.
Cut out some pictures from the internet to show breakfast, some free play time, some quiet time, outdoor time. Parks are crowded, but just in the neighborhood, and they can go sequentially. They have a sense of, oh, I did this, I did this, I did this, and just checking that off gives the kid a sense of, oh, life is okay, life is normal. I'm having some control. I'm doing the same kinds of stuff, different but similar than I was doing in school. I do think I want to talk a little bit about children's feelings. Let's not negate them. If a child is having an anxiety attack or a panic attack, I just had a parent that I work with go to the emergency room with a panic attack. And what she said is, I'm so embarrassed because there were these medical professionals that came out in hazmat suits to the ER and just to realize she had a panic attack. And I said, please don't feel embarrassed. She says, what a waste of resources, what a waste of their time. And she was scolding and beating herself down. And I had to work with her saying, hey, stop. You didn't know it's a panic attack. Her 14-year-old ran a fever for 2 days prior to that panic attack, and she didn't even realize how her anxiety level had escalated to the point that she ended up in the ER. So I think it's very, very, very critical for us to validate our children's emotions, whatever they may be. They may say, Mommy, I'm scared, or I'm upset, or I'm angry, I'm frustrated, if they have the language. And if they don't, do you know how your kids show their behaviors or their frustrations or their fears? They act out. You tell them to take the garbage out, you come back 10 minutes later, they're still sitting where they were sitting. And for you to say, it's not because they're stupid, and it's not because they're blowing me off, and it's not because they want to make my day difficult, it is that something else is going on, and this is their way of expressing it.
Yes, and in fact, that tendency for that behavior to be displaced is really important for parents to kind of be mindful of, because even conflict itself can feel like a literally some entertainment or distraction, a way of directing a child's energy. So you may find yourself getting into a conflict that is really unnecessary. And I was talking to a parent yesterday, and I said, what I'd really like you to do is to slow down. And if your child's acting out, particularly if it's something different than maybe they would have done, or even if it's something that they have done, but you're seeing it in a different way right now, to, instead of having the immediate response to be punitive or to scold, to actually have a response of something involving checking in with them, saying, I'm noticing this happening. I'm noticing you doing this. Can you tell me what's going on with you? Do you have any thoughts on that in terms of a different way for parents to approach their children, particularly when they're seeing some of the kind of things we all see with kids? Like you said, you ask them to clean a dish or take out garbage and they don't do it. Can you kind of give some good sense of maybe a good way to approach that with a child, so that rather than focusing on just the behavior, we're focusing on the emotions?
So we typically talk about 3 steps. The first is to reflect. So to say to you, Adam, I know we're all in this very funny, crazy times. We just want to just sit and slouch and do nothing. And, there doesn't seem to be an urgency for anything because we're all home. There's no school. I understand how that feels, Adam. But here in the house, so we are reflecting that back to them, saying, this is how you're feeling. So we reflect that back, and we validate and say, you know what, Mommy and Daddy feel like that too. We want to just get up at 8 or 9, not log into our computers because we are not at our offices. We feel the same way too. We just want to give in to this lethargy and this inertia and just want to feel lazy. Mm-hmm. So we are validating that. But if we keep doing that, we're not going to get through this in a sane and healthy way. So we all need to do what we need to do as much as we don't want to do it. So we're making it a we situation, we're validating it for them, but nonetheless holding them responsible for doing what they should be doing. And typically that creates more of a joining in the resistance rather than fighting the resistance. And that's something, it takes time, it takes patience, which are 2 rare commodities these days for parents. They're low on time and low on frustration tolerance. And so it's easy for me to sit here and say, please do this. And I think it's a tall order for parents. So I don't want parents to think like, oh, do you know what we have to deal with? It's not this one child. We're dealing with the stuff on the stove and, on logging into our computers. So we're multitasking. It is challenging, but I think if we can press that pause button, I think the result will be so much better for everybody.
As you're talking, what I really hear from you and picking up on is this idea of the we. And that when you're going through a really stressful time, we know for these kids and for the adults that isolation is really our enemy in some ways. That isolation is the thing that actually often is very hard for people to handle. And so what I hear from you is that, at least within your family where you have some control, what I hear you saying is try to create a sense that we are in this together. We will get through this. We will work through this.
Mhm. So the other piece, I think, the two challenges is we are a culture that keeps looking out, right? Because of resources, we reach out to people, and times like this are forcing us to look within. Whether it's a sense of gratitude, a sense of acceptance, a sense of okayness, look within ourselves. Parents have having to pull from within.
Right.
They don't have babysitters, they don't have childcare workers, they don't have teachers. So they have to pull from within. And I'm confident that we all have that within us. It's just not been tested, but we have it. The question is, can we sustain it for an indefinite future? Are we going to run out of gas, run out of steam? But I think if we can stay in the present moment and just think of today, what can I do today? Let's not think of 2 weeks down the road. Oh my God, I can't do this for 2 more weeks or 2 more months. Let's stay focused on the present because none of us know what the next day will bring. And so I think it's important that parents feel a sense of confidence within themselves that they know how to care for themselves and their children. And that's important. So little things that help, like having kids make little hearts for the garbage guy and putting it on the garbage cans. I think getting kids to do something because we can talk to them about stuff, but it's 1 year in and 1 year out. Or doing something for the police force. Have your kids draw some pictures and take them to the police officers or a police station or a fire station, or to the local grocery store where the grocery store workers are still working, just saying thank you or cutting some heart shapes, wear gloves, wear masks and drop them off. It'll be great for those workers that still have to work, but it gives your kids a sense of, oh, we can still do something in this situation and kind of shift that focus like we were talking earlier, not on the negative, not like, oh, this is so hard, to what can we do even in this very challenging situation and shift it to more of a positive and productive kind of an attitude.
So what you're really doing, if I understand the way you're approaching this from a parenting perspective, is you're educating parents to think about really every day asking yourself and helping your children do this, which is to ask, what do I ultimately have control over?
Absolutely.
And they're promoting you're promoting that with parents by having children do things that they do have control over. And what I love in the examples you gave is not only are those things entertaining for children to draw and to do crafts, but it's also a way of being compassionate, a way of being mindful of the other people out there that are helping you live your life. So you're really kind of helping people shift from the parts of the brain that are focused on those intense emotions, on survival, and you're really helping them shift up into the problem-solving part of the brain. Is that sort of what's happening?
Absolutely. And I don't know how many of your viewers are familiar with Dr. Becky Bailey's conscious discipline. If you want to put that link to the parents on your website, her model is based on the brain state model. And right now with the brain stem and the limbic system is where we all are as a country, as families, as individuals, and the problem solving, which is the prefrontal cortex, is not being as used as much. So the safety and connection. If you can guarantee for yourselves and your children a sense of safety and a sense of connection. Safety saying, we are here. The healthcare workers are taking care of it. Your schools are closed because your teachers don't want you to sneeze with your friends nearby. So we're making sure that everybody is safe and healthy rather than, oh my God, this virus is spreading and we have to keep you from the virus. Right. So shift how you present this to your children and then kind of make them feel safe, because that is the key piece. Kids especially little kids, need to feel safe, need to feel that we can protect them. And yes, the virus is, the virus has to be invited into the house. I want us to remember that. It doesn't just come in on its own accord, but it has to be invited. What do I mean by that? Is you are going out or you're opening it up to your friends. I had some kids who had sleepovers. I said, absolutely not, because you don't know where those kids were exposed to. So the virus, remember that the virus has to be invited. And if you don't invite it, it's not going to come. So keep yourselves home, wash your hands, make sure that you're not in any way opening any kind of opportunities to this virus to come and get us. And if the kids can feel like, hey, we're keeping you safe, we're here, we are in our backyard, we are in our porch, we're on our deck, because the virus can get us here.
Yes.
And that makes the kids feel very safe and us feel safe, and limit the trips to the grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's important to say. And the connection, they are losing, especially for teenagers. Teenagers are having a really, really rough time, not being able to congregate in malls or at schools or things like that. Physical activity is so critical for teenagers. They may not want to get out of the couch, but have them go for walks, for bike rides, jumping jacks, running around, kicking a ball, doing hoops if you have a basketball hoop. Get them out at least for an hour or two to kind of do that physical exercise as much as they don't want to do it. Teenagers, I think, are especially having a hard time.
I just have to comment. We have questions. I do have to comment because this is an interesting situation that's literally really happening here. So you may not have seen this, but Dr. Chinni's glasses fell to the floor. Now, being a gentleman, I would normally have bent over and picked them up. And then as soon as I was about to do that, I said to myself, well, that would be less than 6 feet away, so I can't do that.
And I actually didn't pick them up because I wanted to be sure I had a Clorox wipe in my hand.
So we're just going to leave them there for like the next hour, if that's okay. Don't be bothered.
Okay.
So, but you hit on something, though, that I want to emphasize, and I think you and I maybe talked about this over the last few days, but there are these parts of the kids' lives that have, that whether we're going through this or not, that are very tightly connected to mental health. And let me just mention 3 that are really important. Diet, and I know that a lot of us wind up eating even more than we would normally eat just out of stress and anxiousness and boredom. The other one is exercise. That has a tremendous impact on our mental health. One of my sons was just starting his lacrosse season, and that just came to a complete end. And then the other one is sleep. And I do hear I was just talking to a 14-year-old that's a client of mine yesterday, and he was telling me that, he's playing video games and up late. So any additional words on anything else, just standard things that parents should be saying to themselves almost every day, and then trying to convey to their children, hey, these are some basic things that are going to make us healthier, that in no way put us at risk, but actually keep us functioning better. Anything else you want to add to that?
So I had one parent say, my kids are on their screens and I can't stay up till that late, so I go to bed by 10:30, 11. And they may be up till 3, 4, I don't know, because I can be a drill sergeant. And these are kids who come back from college. She says, do I police them? Do I monitor them because they're back from college? Because many parents are having to deal with children back from college, not just teenagers and middle schoolers. And I said, in these very unusual circumstances, normally I wouldn't want a parent to police a kid who's in college because they're adults. But in this situation, their behavior, like this kid is sleeping on the couch. So when everybody is up in the morning, he's still asleep on the couch. So I said, in this particular situation, you've got to make him mindful that his behavior is impacting the entire family. Right. And he can sleep at any time he wants, but he needs to be up by 9. And if he's not up by 9, you take his phone. He can sleep. He can sleep at 5 and wake up at 9, and it doesn't disrupt the family routine in the morning. Great. But at some point, you have to give them a sense of choice. Right. You can be drill sergeants. But at the same time, tell them that they need the sleep. They can't just sleep at 3 and get up at 2 in the afternoon. I'm hoping they'll go back to school at some point, and then their whole rhythm is out of whack. It is a struggle, and I'm encouraging parents to really engage in a dialogue with their kids and kind of giving them a sense of rationale and not harass them about it, but have some reasonable consequences, even if they're adult children, because it is affecting the entire family.
I want to ask Ashley here. Do we have some questions?
There's 2 questions from Carrie. The first one is, are you seeing a significant increase in requests for services due to the COVID-19? And then the second one is, how are you addressing crisis or urgent needs?
So I do believe that there's an increase in anxiety, but we haven't necessarily seen more calls. And I believe that's because people are so afraid of coming out, and because our professions involve interpersonal contact. Now, in our practice, we have taken several measures. We have taken away all the magazines in the waiting room, all the toys in the waiting room. And what we are telling for those patients that absolutely need to come in is that they stay in their cars until we tell them to come in. Then they walk right into our offices. We have the parent and the child wash their hands, sanitize it. We give them a Clorox wipe to wipe out all the surfaces that they're sitting on, and we do that before and after the session for those that need to be seen in the office. But for a majority of our clients, we're doing the video sessions, and actually parents and children are responding really well to that.
We've had some similar experiences. So at Youth Services, what we're doing is we really are not seeing, all the therapists are working remotely right now. And we are set up to see clients by video or by phone, of course. And I will tell you that we've had a sort of interesting experience that actually a lot of clients have been perfectly fine with the phone. So we've kind of got a mix, probably about maybe 20-30% video and the rest by phone. So that's something we do just to kind of, again, to try to manage the spread of the virus. And in terms of the way we function, so Youth and Family Services isn't necessarily a crisis center in the sense of what some people might think of, literally they're in crisis and they just kind of show up on the doorstep and immediate services. We take calls, and what we do is then we try to assign those people to a therapist. Right now, we are actually trying to work through, we had, frankly, before the crisis, we had a backlog of cases. And so we're really trying to aggressively now try to work through those cases and hopefully get those clients in by virtual therapy, of course. And then one of the things that we're doing also, and by the way, anybody's welcome to call for services, and we'll do our best. We know that people are in a really difficult situation. And we also know, based upon sometimes financial circumstances, if we don't have an immediate opening, I'll try to help people find a program where they might be able to get them in sooner. But we'll do our best to get people open as best as we can. I will tell you that one of the things that we've been doing is we have found some of our clients have not wanted a traditional hour session. But what we wound up doing with some clients is we're just doing regular check-ins. So we've had some families where, we'll call 2-3 times a week for 15-20 minutes. That's sort of what they need. So the other piece is we're really trying to be adaptable and flexible to what the clients are presenting. And some clients really want that traditional 50-minute, 55-minute, 60-minute session. And like I said, some clients, just because they feel like this is more of a period about coping than they want to do traditional psychotherapy, we're doing kind of routine calls to them, just kind of checking in and seeing how they're doing. So I think we all had to be flexible and kind of change our styles.
So I do want to get the word out for the community that insurance companies are really have done a nice job in the last week or two, and we as mental health professionals have really hustled and scrambled to get these platforms in place that are HIPAA compliant, that is confidential. We send you out a form for you to sign, letting you know that, and then we ask you to set up your child in a private space. So it's important that we are conducting the sessions where we are kind of maintaining the confidentiality on our end, and we're not having our spouses or children interrupt us, and that you on your end are also setting up a space where your child or you can also be in a space that's not interrupted. And just check with your insurance companies to make sure that those telehealth services, whether they're phone or video, are covered. And my understanding is there's lots of lobbying to
Yes.
get the insurance companies to actually cover them, like a routine office visit. So for those of you whose children or you yourselves are experiencing anxiety, please don't hesitate to reach out and leave a message or contact the text a tip. And if you're not able to come, we can make sure that you get some resources available to you.
Yes, and you know, depending upon your financial situation, also another really wonderful local agency is CYN. It's Community Youth Network. They actually just sent out something yesterday saying that they do have openings available, and they are a nonprofit, and they have some grants, so you can check with them depending on your financial circumstances, so that the goal is that hopefully everybody can find the services that they need. And again, if you call here at 847-244-1101, extension star 402, sorry, well, yeah, go right to my extension, 402. I am more than happy to play caseworker and try to help you. The other thing I want to kind of do a shout out to is 211. This just started here in Lake County, maybe 2-3 months ago now. 211 is something that's spreading throughout the nation, and it's setting up in different communities, and it's run by United Way. And 211 enables you. You can go onto their website and then look at their options. You can call it, and they can provide you. The goal here is it should be a place you can find out all the resources in the community, whether that be Warren Township or Lake County. And the benefit of that is that some of you watching, you might be dealing with mental health issues, but you most likely be dealing with food issues, food scarcity, financial, other practical issues, and there really are a lot of services out there.
And the Community Action Partnership of Lake County
Yes.
is another good
CAPS.
resource, CAP, where they can give you rental assistance, energy assistance, and I think most, like North Shore, ComEd, have all announced that they're not going to turn off the lights, and they will do a deferred payment plan or a partial payment. So for those of you in financial crisis, please check with your rental if you're in an apartment, or with your banks if you're paying a mortgage. Most agencies are being very understanding and accommodating to the financial concerns at this point. So I have a 25-year-old that just got laid off, and she's like freaking out. So I sat down and made a list for her to call all of the bill payers to see what kinds of accommodations. And she was concerned about her credit score. And I said, please ask if they defer your car payment for 120 days, will it affect your credit score? So there are resources out there, and it's hard to think clearly and pragmatically, especially when the anxieties are so high. But reaching out to us, we can also direct you to those resources.
Just one more resource while we're talking. So, of course, I work here at the township. I don't have any direct contact with the food pantry, but we do have a food pantry. And that food pantry is open limited hours. So you'd probably want to contact 847-244-1101, extension star 101. If you don't get an answer, leave a message. And we do have a food pantry. And again, like I said, they're open limited hours during this crisis, but they are available for township residents.
I want to kind of deviate just a little
Please,
bit.
absolutely.
We work with a lot of families that are in a divorce context and co-parenting. And I just want to kind of reach out to those families that are where kids are visiting the other parent, and this is especially a time to be understanding, to be collaborative, and not increase the stress and anxiety on your children. We have one family where I think now everybody's working from home, but one of them was not working from home, and the other parent said, and so taking them to work with you, can you not send them to me? And she said, no. So let's be flexible. Let's keep our kids' health and our health uppermost. And in fact, the American Association of Mediators came up with some guidelines for parents that we are sending out to all of our clients that are in that situation with co-parenting. Visitation. I mean, there is no flying, there is no driving, right? To the extent. So and again, be very honest with the other partner. if your child or you are continuing to be exposed, so that you may be able to keep them and not have to send on visitation. I work with this 16-year-old whose mom and sister got sick. They didn't get a test because they didn't qualify, but he can't visit his dad and he is upset. And I said, I can go against the CDC recommendations and I know you're young and your dad's young and probably will be okay, but let's hunker down for 2 weeks, which is the quarantine, the self-quarantine period. And there has to be some understanding. So I'm working with the dad and saying, can you find other ways of connecting with your child rather than in person? So especially that just adds another layer of stress for parents when they're in a situation where the kids are visiting one or the other parent. And I want to really kind of make sure that you feel supported in that process. And if there's any tension, I know the courts are closed and GALs and child reps are still available. So please reach out to them if you were to run into a situation where you don't know how to handle it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you mentioned it. I've seen that come up in situations. And, excuse me, sorry. And I think that the message really to both parents is whatever decisions you make need to be in the children's best interest. I mean, we preach that again and again. I used to do mediation. I don't do it anymore, but I used to do mediation. And the standard phrase to everything is this in the child's best interest? And you cannot make the argument that a visitation is somehow more important than the child's health and well-being. And so what I say, I've said to some parents is, look, I'm not going to tell you what action to take in this situation. That's not my role. And you've got to be mindful whatever actions you take can have legal ramifications. But whatever you do, make sure it's rational, it makes sense, and it's in the child's interest. Yeah. Thank you for saying that. Are there any other questions? Okay. So I'm going to kind of put you on the spot a little bit. And because we've been talking, I think, in a way, from almost a preventative perspective, kind of like, what are these things that you can do? How can you kind of keep your children functioning as healthy as possible? Do you have any thoughts or anything you would say to somebody who is dealing with a child who has a diagnosable issue, such as they, before any of this ever happened, they're diagnosed with, for example, anxiety disorder? And I know this is a very broad question, but I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on it, because I do know for some families that really is the issue that this was already the child already having severe issues with anxiety. Any observations or thoughts that you have about what parents should be mindful of when they're dealing with a child who already has a clinical diagnosis?
So number one, I think if the child is connected to a mental health professional, make sure that they have their regular sessions, their weekly sessions. And I have a kid who is in a therapeutic day school, and the therapeutic day school has done an amazing job having the social worker call in just to check in with the kid every day, giving them work that they can do. But he said to me yesterday, he said, because my brain is bored, I keep thinking about this peer of his that just, he says, I have all these negative thoughts and my brain gets so mad, but even though I'm not at school, because my brain has nothing else to think about, I go and get really upset and mad with this person. So we talked about, okay, so because your brain is bored, it goes into this, these other thoughts come in, which is he has some anxiety and, even though he's not in school. So we talked about what are the triggers for that, or when he does his e-learning or anything related to the school, this kid comes up. So we talked about how can you disrupt that cycle. So we did a session, and I think it's very, very critical for kids with who have the diagnosis and who are in ongoing therapy. As much as the parents are afraid of getting these kids out, video sessions, they're doing a really nice job. I have another kid who has severe ADHD, and he is in 3 sports simultaneously. And I was with him and the phone was all over the place. He couldn't sit still. He had a fidget in his hand. He was in his room. And at points I was seeing him upside down in his own room. And his parents were very mindful, making sure he gets 2 hours outside in the morning, 2 hours, the movement breaks the brain. So asking kids, how does your brain feel? How does your body feel? And those are two questions, and making sure that we give them some ways of making both their brains and bodies calm, you know, is so, so critical. So yes, I think that's a very good point, Adam, because we do see a lot of kids with pre-diagnosed conditions and independent of the current situation. And so we do have to address those and this additional layer. So I think for those parents, one of my colleagues said, why are you doing so many video sessions?
Yeah.
Are they all so desperate? I said, no, this is the continuity. This is the maintenance. We cannot, just like we want to exercise, it's the continuity, the maintenance, the consistency, and the predictability that is so important for these kids to continue to function at their optimal.
So what you're really getting at, and I think that you said it in a really nice way, which is that if you have a child with an identified clinical issue, as a parent, as a caregiver, you really want to identify those specific strategies and skills that you're going to use during this period. This may not be a period where you want to figure out what's worked best and really have those identified and use them in a consistent way. That's kind of what I'm hearing.
I mean, let's take a medical analogy, right? If you have diabetes,
Right.
You don't stop taking your insulin and exercising and eating right. You do that, but you also take all the social distancing and the additional measures because of COVID-19. So you can't ignore a pre-existing condition. It has to be attended while simultaneously addressing the current situation.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. You know what? And again, I appreciate you saying that because as I think about some of the conversations I've had with parents, I had one about a week ago with a parent, and they were really trying to kind of understand what to do with the child's pre-existing condition, which was in this case a history of anxiety and depression. And actually, now that I think back, that was kind of the conversation we had. I think I said to her, I said, well, let's talk about what are the 2 or 3 things that you have seen that have been most effective. And I said, we're going to really use this as a period to really do the best we can to instill those skills and techniques.
Mm-hmm. School refusal is going to be really challenging. We have a bunch of kids in our caseload that are school refusal or school avoidant.
Yeah.
And the current situation just reinforces that. So how are we going to work with these clients when they have to eventually go back to school? Because they're getting so complacent and comfortable with this new normal. So we are going to have some challenges once we go back to the normal that we were used to.
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, reminds me of a conversation I had with a young man earlier in the week, which was, how are things going? And he's like, everything's great. Like, he was really happy. He'd been out of school for a couple of weeks, and he's just kind of doing his thing. And this was difficult because of a situation where a parent was still having to work because of their job, and his kid's at home on his own. And it is a reminder of how important it is, not that we create again a regimented schedule, but that we do need to keep our kids accomplishing things, active and engaged in a meaningful way. Because I agree with you. I hadn't really thought of this until you just said it, but you're right. We could see a real surge in school avoidance. Even with kids who maybe don't have a history of it.
Absolutely.
After being out for this long.
I have one kid with separation anxiety, and his mom is a teacher, and she's home, and he's literally hip to hip with her the whole day, and he's fine.
Yeah.
But wait till he has to go back to school and has to separate from his mom. We're going to see a real kind of meltdown, of not wanting to do it. And kids, we will have to work especially hard to make sure that institutions like the school, the church, and all feel safe again for our children. And again, that's that next step once we get out of the social isolation. But I think anxiety, kids who are prone to anxiety will continue. The OCD is increased. All of us are washing our hands. So kids with obsessive compulsive disorders are becoming especially mindful. And, it's accentuating their pathology or their challenges. Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see how, when this situation resolves, we will be faced with a whole host of new challenges.
I know we're getting towards probably the end of our time, and I think some of the questions I've asked, we have about 10 minutes? Okay. Some of the questions I've asked already were questions that some questions I had from parents. And one of the questions that's kind of come up a couple of times, and I'm kind of curious how you might approach it. And I also understand this question is very age dependent, but sometimes parents are almost concerned about the fact that there is a lack of response by the child. That the child seems to be kind of, again, like just kind of okay with everything. There's no problems. And you'll often hear parents, sometimes even after there's a loss in the family, parents will say, I would be expecting my child to be grieving or to be more upset, and I'm just not seeing anything. Do you have any particular way that you might have a parent, and I'm going to give it a random age, or let's say the child is 10 years old, 11, 12, any general way that you might want to have a parent maybe approach that to just kind of do a check-in to make sure that the child is not totally internalizing this all?
So number one, has the parent really given adequate and appropriate amount of information to the child? The child knows that they're not going to school. The child knows and sees that the parents are working from home, and the child knows and sees that they're not participating in their activities, right? So those are information, whether their children are given or not, are experiencing it. So what the child is experiencing is already not normal.
Okay.
So I think it's important, not necessarily are you anxious, are you afraid, but how is this feeling? How is this feeling that you're not? In fact, the kid that I talked to yesterday with the ADHD, he says, I'm going crazy, he said. He says, I'm not playing soccer, I'm not doing track or cross country. He says, I don't think I can do this anymore. So, and he's 11, so he was able to verbalize how he's going. So I think rather than talk about, are you afraid of the virus? Are you afraid of, something bad happening to grandma or grandpa? Just asking kids, how does it feel that you can go and have sleepovers, that you can go for your sports, that you can play soccer, that you have to keep washing your hands? How does that feel? And the kids will say, fine, and that's okay as long as you're just doing a good pulse read.
Yeah.
Don't avoid asking your kids how this new normal feels for them. That's important. And give them time to ask questions. Hey, is there anything that came up for you guys today that you want to ask mom and dad about or ask us about? Give them that opportunity for asking. Because if you don't ask, they will stuff it in.
Yeah, so I really like how you frame this, which is to avoid the, hey, isn't this all making you kind of nervous or anxious, but really just asking them kind of how are they experiencing this. The other thing is at a practical level, this may be a good time for some families to institute something like a family meeting night. I do that very frequently when I do family counseling, is I'll often have families develop, whether it's daily or a couple times a week, to have a night that they do a check-in, kind of a highs and lows, and kind of check in with how life is going within the family. This might be a really good time for families to institute something like that.
So with the middle schoolers and the high schoolers, what I'm recommending with parents is let them come up with a one page of what they know about COVID-19. Because they're capable of doing that. And then look through that and see how much of that is factual and how much of that is just, hype. And so you're giving them a sense of control and also getting them academically, kind of doing that work rather than just rely on the news media to say, go and look at it. What is this? What do we know about this? And just giving them some outline and then asking them questions. So as a segue to having more deeper conversations with middle school and high schoolers. With elementary and preschoolers, you just want to keep them with a planned way, active, safe, model calm for them. Even if you're frazzled, just be very calm in the tone of your voice, and stuff. See if you can do some deep breathing yourself so you're not getting so frustrated, because they are kids and they're cooped in the house. I wish it was summer and we could go out, we can't go out as much, but get those bikes out, the trikes out, even on the driveway, the chalk. We've taken our kids out into our parking lot and just drawn with the chalk and done sessions outside of the office situation. So try and think outside the box. You know your kids well, and coloring is great for the kids. Chalks, a lot of stuff, outside. So just think through, make a list, engage them in that process, saying what are kinds of things that you would like to do? Make putty, make slime, do things, finger paints or whatever, just go collect some leaves or clear the yard. So there's a lot of things that we can engage kids in. Once we engage kids, their resistance is less.
One of the reasons why I've always enjoyed working with you is that you give really wonderful practical solutions. And I will pass that one on to parents as I talk to them. The idea of having your child, I think you said 10 and up, probably middle school through high school, have them sit down and write down what it is that they know about COVID-19 and checking for the accuracy of the information. And it's a wonderful, wonderful way to do that. So we're just down to our last few minutes, and if there are no additional online questions, then what I'll do is just ask you, do you have any final thoughts, anything that you would want, any final thoughts, anything you want to share with the parents?
Yes, we will all get through this. I know that. We are in this together. One of the nice things is, if each of us were experiencing our own challenges, we feel sometimes alone. And yes, we're kind of feeling lonely in our own little homes, but we're all in this together. And the medical professionals are doing as best as they can. But I want us to all remember that if we stay indoors and practice social distancing, keep our calm. That is so key. That is so key. I know it seems like, oh my God, there's this invisible enemy out there. Please don't give in to that sense of panic and fear. It can come into your house if you're practicing, hand washing and social distancing. So just feel more in control, because we can feel in control of this, and really just use the information in a way that keeps you safe and healthy and your kids safe and healthy. We will come to the other side. I know that.
That's wonderful, and I want to support that, and that's exactly the approach hopefully we can all take. And I just want to sort of, again, thank Dr. Chilamkurti so much. Do you want to mention the name of your agency?
It's the Prema Center for Child and Behavioral Health for Children and Families. It's in Chinni. We usually take a very proactive stance with our services. We try not to do more crisis intervention. We do believe that as parents and adults, children have the capacity, their brains are developing, so we want to leverage that brain development to give them the skills to be resilient for life. So let's model calm and resiliency and not fear and panic to our children. And if there's anything myself, my staff can do, Adam is a great resource. I've worked with him. Warren Township is an amazing agency. You should be able to reach out. They have a whole host of resources. But all of us are here to help us, so please don't feel alone. And if you can't afford the services, just let us know, because we can still consult with you without you guys having to worry about getting your child in because you feel you can't, allocate those resources to mental health right now.
Thank you. And just to reiterate, Warren Township Youth and Family Services, our website is WTYouthServices at www.wtyouthservices.com, and then our phone number is 847-244-1101, extension star 401. That'll take you to our frontline phone. We're not physically in the office. I'm popping in and out just a little bit, but overall, none of the staff are here, but we will do the best we can to respond in a timely manner. Also, I'm going to give you our email address, because if you have any questions, I think you saw that WTYS help desk at warrentownship.net. You can ask us questions through that if you're looking for resources or just have a question. If I don't have a good answer, I will consult with other therapists or other clinicians in the community and try to get you the best answer possible to any questions. Also, feel free to let us know what you feel like we need as a community during this period of time. We're really trying to evaluate, because this is all new to us. I originally shut down all of my groups. Now I'm starting to think about maybe there are some groups that we could run kind of using a format like this. So I'm really open to ideas. We do some of our regular groups are parenting the anxious child, parenting the ADHD child, and we're going to have to keep assessing this as we go along. So with that said, again, I want to thank all of you for coming in and watching us today. If we get a good response, I think we'll try to do this more frequently throughout this process, and I'll bring in other guests. So thank you so much, and keep yourself and your family healthy. Take care.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you. Good.